5 Live Formula One.
The grid is set for the Austrian Grand Prix, and it was Lando Norris who set an absolutely stunning pole lap, taking pole position ahead of Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari and his teammate Oscar Piastri finishing third. Welcome to your Chequered Flag podcast with me, Rosanna Tennant, and joining me to look back on what we've seen during that qualifying session is our lead commentator Ben Edwards, racing driver Alice Powell, and hopefully, if he's written his review of the session, the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson will join us too. Guys, we came into this weekend saying that Lando Norris needed to bounce back after that altercation with his teammate in Canada the last time we raced. And wow, he put it all together and took pole with a mighty margin of over half a second. Ben, wow, did he need it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, great margin. I think that's the biggest margin of this year. To do that around this track as well is amazing, because normally we have the shortest gaps. So it was remarkable what Lando Norris did, and absolutely perfect, as you say, in terms of having a bad weekend in Canada a couple of weeks ago, to come back and take that vital pole position. And of course, points matter. That won't come until we get into the race itself. But to be 2 places ahead of Oscar Piastri, it's always a bit tricky for if you're getting going from third place on the grid. So this is really good for Lando Norris. I'm very pleased for him. It's going to make an interesting race though, because Oscar Piastri will not be giving up.
Absolutely. And Alice, I feel a bit silly because we spoke a lot about Lando Norris unable to hook up a lap in Q3, fastest in Q1 and Q2 of late, and then it seemed to sort of unravel in the final part of qualifying. And, well, he proved me wrong, didn't he?
He certainly did. And he didn't just, do a good lap. He did a fantastic lap. He was half a second clear of Charles Leclerc, who's in second place, who we'll touch on. A solid job by Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, but we'll touch on that later on, of course. But it's so hard to be half a second clear of anybody at the top of the timesheets here around Austria, because it's just such a short lap and it's such a close grid. And we've seen in Q1 of how close the field was separated by less than 1 second, actually less than 9.5 tenths. So everyone was really, really close, and then Norris just strolls along and bang, he puts out that lap. But obviously we do have to remember that Oscar had to back out of his final attempt due to the spinning Pierre Gasly at the final corner. Would he have still been on pole, Lando? I actually think he would have been.
There were probably quite a lot of shoulda, woulda, couldas in that qualifying session. I've given you your top 3, but behind Oscar Piastri in P3 was Lewis Hamilton, the second Ferrari on the road in P4, George Russell ahead of Liam Lawson, P5 and P6, Max Verstappen, P7. We'll talk about his experience of qualifying here in a little while, and Gabriel Bortoleto, P8 in the Sauber. Excellent from him. Kimi Antonelli, P9, and Pierre Gasly, P10. And we lost some big names at early doors as well. Carlos Sainz out, P19. Didn't make it through Q1, and Yuki Tsunoda as well in the second Red Bull car, unable to hook up a proper lap, and P18 for the Japanese driver. And Alice, you spoke about those close margins. Andrew, this is such a tricky track to get right, and it has been biting drivers a little bit over the course of the weekend, with drivers picking up damage here and there. I guess that might play into tomorrow's race as well, but it was all important as well to keep yourself out of trouble in this qualifying session.
Yes, Rosanna, we saved the best spin till last, didn't we, with a double 360 from Pierre Gasly in the Alpine out of the last corner, and that actually messed up 2 people's laps. Oscar Piastri, because he had yellow flags, and Max Verstappen, who was behind Gasly at the time, and he's ended up down in 7th place as a result, but he was nowhere near being able to match the McLarens. And Lando Norris has just been in a world of his own today. He missed the first session of practice, remember, because Alex Dunn, the Northern Irishman who races in F2, a McLaren development driver, had a go in his car, and what an outstanding job Dunn did, by the way. Dunn did, that's something I'm not going to say again in a hurry. Or am I? He was just less than a tenth behind Oscar Piastri and the other McLaren, but he's picked, as soon as he got into the car in P2, Lando Norris, he's been absolutely flying. He looked absolutely on another level from everybody else all weekend, and it's just what he needed after that difficult race in Canada.
It was funny watching him sitting on the pit wall during FP1, and actually talking about done did. He did such a good job. Done and done. He did such a good job that we were even talking about Alex Dunn giving McLaren a bit of a headache in terms of who to put in their team. Was he actually going to be better than Lando Norris? But my goodness me, did Norris quash any sense of that? He's been so strong right from the get-go. Alice, how does a driver just park what's gone before and just do what needs to be done and clear the mindset? Because a lot of people have been talking about the noise that isn't in Oscar Piastri's head, but perhaps therefore is in Lando Norris's head, and he's managed to silence that this weekend.
It is, and it's so easy for anyone to sit here and say, well, just block out the noise, just don't read the comments on social media, don't listen to the journalists and the voices around the paddock. And it's so hard to do that because it's such a high pressurized sport. There's so much pressure on every single driver out there to perform. Certainly Oscar and Lando, the regs change next year. They may be thinking, well, this could be our, as in each of them individually, only chance of getting a world championship before obviously the regs are going to change. Who knows how well the McLaren will fare next year. So again, that adds pressure as well to them. But he's got a great team behind him, has Lando Norris, and a team that he's, in terms of his core management team, his physio team that he's worked with since he's been racing in Ginetta Juniors, Formula 4 level. They know him inside out, and he just needs to try and work with them as closely as possible to help his mindset. And its mindset is so important, and we all have bad days, and every driver is different, and Lando clearly has got it sorted, at least for this weekend.
He has, and it's not the only weekend. Starting from pole position, he started in from pole, of course, in the first race in Australia, and he won that race. He started from pole in Monaco and took the victory there with fastest lap. So, if he's got that sort of confidence again that he appeared to have when we heard from him, and we'll hear more from him in a moment, he really did put together a very impressive weekend so far, starting from pole.
Yeah, McLaren, quite a sensitive team in the way they work quietly behind the scenes with their drivers. They're completely the opposite of Red Bull, where it's just like, you get on with it. If you can't match Max Verstappen, then you get kicked out. McLaren are a very human team, a very empathetic team, and they've been working quite hard with Norris behind the scenes over the past few races. I can't tell you all of the things that have been going on. I don't know all the things that have been going on, but I can't tell you some of the things that I do know. But they have been helping him with, in certain ways, a sort of support mechanism built around him on top of the team that he already has himself. And you can see an example of it by this suspension change they introduced in Canada. It's not much, it's just a small geometry change, and it's aimed at giving him better feel through the front axle. And they've done it specifically for him. Oscar Piastri doesn't feel that he needs it. He's not even using it on his car. But they've put it on Norris's car. It doesn't change the actual sort of theoretical maximum performance level of the car, but of course if it allows Norris to feel the front axle better, and that's what he needs to drive at his best. Different racing drivers feel the racing car in a different way. Some people feel it through their bum, some feel it through their feet. Norris, like Fernando Alonso, feels it through his hands, and he hasn't been getting those messages this year. And McLaren have done this special part, or this special change, just for him. And on top of the psychological work they've been doing behind the scenes, it's clearly made a difference this weekend. It looked like it was going to make a difference in Canada, but he messed qualifying up there. He hasn't done at all in Austria. He's been absolutely brilliant, and that's not exaggerating, just outstanding. The key thing for him is he's got to carry this momentum forward, score the points that he needs tomorrow, close that gap to Piastri, and then keep it going, as I think we're about to hear Norris saying in his interview.
And also, just going back to that point you made about McLaren being a family and quite different in terms of their approach to Red Bull, I know that Lando's management and McLaren have sat down and sort of said, well, how can we help Lando? How can we improve his qualifying? What do we need to do collectively as a group to improve his pace in Q3, which is when it counts. They all have 100% belief in his ability, and he's very, very talented, and he's just shown his talent once again in that qualifying session. I think that makes a big difference with having that core team around you that put an arm around you when things aren't going maybe as well as they could have been. And certainly with Piastri, he's having a great season, but remember his weakness was sort of that race pace, and they put an arm around him. He's got Mark Webber, of course, in his corner, as Piastri, who's hugely successful and experienced. So I think it's a nice setup that they've got going on at McLaren, and clearly Lando Norris is feeling very settled at the moment this weekend.
Yeah, and it has made a difference of 0.521 of a second, over half a second clear of Charles Leclerc. Let's hear from Lando Norris then, talking to Lawrence Barretto.
Crikey, Lando, I know you love this place, but that was outstanding. How pleased are you with not just only 1 lap, but 2 laps?
I mean, it's been a very good weekend for me so far, so I've some monster. It's been just a very good weekend, from FP2 onwards. I felt comfy in the car. I felt like I've always been performing well and putting good laps in, and I think what I'm most happy about is my Q3 run 2 lap was a very, very nice lap. Probably better than my lap I did in Monaco, to be honest with you. So a very strong feeling, a very, very strong lap. But that's always nice. Like, that's almost always the best bit, disregarding whether you're first, second or third. Just knowing you feel like you got everything out of the car is the best part of it. But yeah, it's just been a very smooth weekend, and that's what I've been after. It's what I've not had for a while, and it's been the best feeling.
What do you think it's been down to? Have you just got more on top of it, and when it's on the limit, you're able to push it a lot more?
It's a combination of different things. We have some upgrades on the car this weekend, which have probably moved the car in the right direction. It's hard to feel how much impact they have, but when you look at the gap we had today on one of the shortest tracks of the year, half a second is pretty damn good. And then, the team has been working hard to try and give me a bit more feeling in the car, and I've been working a lot with my team around me to try and improve in every area possible, and especially to try and achieve a day like today. So little bits of a lot of things, and when they all add up, that's when you can have a result like today.
That was Lando Norris, your pole sitter for the Austrian Grand Prix tomorrow. And we'll talk about P2 very shortly, Charles Leclerc taking that position this afternoon. But I want to talk about Oscar Piastri first. Coming home P3 today, unable to start his flying lap because of the yellow flags. And, of course, he's our championship leader at the moment. He desperately needs to get right up there and challenge Norris tomorrow, doesn't he, Alice?
He does, because that's his closest championship rival. We're still nearly halfway into the season. Still plenty of races left to go, but he needs to try and get up to his teammate. DRS here is massively effective, so it's not all doom and gloom for Oscar Piastri. We've got some very long straights. We've got 3 DRS zones here, so he could potentially claw up to the back of Norris. Okay, he's got to get past Leclerc first, but still can make moves forward, can Oscar, and he seems fairly confident. Nothing seems to really faze him. Of course he's going to be disappointed, but I think he would have been probably right up behind Lando in P2 if he didn't have to back out due to the Gasly spin.
Absolutely, and he's very consistent. He's been in the top 4 in all of the Grand Prix so far this year in terms of qualifying. He has that championship lead, as you say. How it goes in the race, and we know he can race very well. He can be extremely hard on the opening lap sometimes when he gets the opportunity. So, we're talking about qualifying. That is not the race itself. Lando's still going to have to get off that front line very well, but with a car in between them, that might make life a little more awkward for Oscar Piastri. But he is consistent. He was a bit frustrated with himself, but still, I think, very, very capable of dealing with these ups and downs. So Lando Norris needs to push as hard as possible as he did today and keep that pressure going on.
He was so measured, wasn't he, when he got out of the car? Not frustrated, not sort of throwing his toys out of the pram, because in actual fact, I think he'd have been more frustrated if he'd made a mistake and binned that flying lap. He wasn't even able to start it. And so maybe that adds a bit of comfort, Alice, for him, that he knows it was sort of out of his hands today. It will, but I think deep down he knew he wasn't able to challenge Norris. I think Piastri looked a little bit shocked at how fast Norris went, to be honest with you.
But I don't think he had enough to challenge for pole position. Definitely would have been able to jump Leclerc, but certainly not Lando.
Let's hear how Piastri is feeling then. Obviously, we heard on our broadcast, we heard him talking to David Coulthard. Let's hear what he had to say to Lawrence Barretto shortly afterwards.
Hey Oscar, how are you feeling after that quali? Obviously, I know you always want to be on pole, but it's felt like a bit of a trickier weekend for you to hook everything up. So is that not so bad considering?
Not really. I mean, I'm pretty disappointed, but not in myself. I mean, I didn't get to do my last lap of Q3 because of the yellow flags. So, I think pole was going to be a tough battle to win, but the front row was definitely there for the taking. So, a shame to have that kind of bring our qualifying undone a bit, but it still could have been worse. So, we'll try and make some progress tomorrow.
What have you made of the pace of the Ferraris today? Because they looked a little bit off yesterday, and how much do you think that's going to be a threat to you to try and claw back P2 at least tomorrow?
It's hard to say. I mean, they've looked good in quite a few races. Just their qualifyings have not looked amazing. So let's wait and see. But they have looked a bit more competitive this weekend over one lap. We'll see if that translates to the race or if it hurts in the race. I've certainly felt that one myself, where you think after qualifying it's going to be perfect and then it's not. So let's wait and see. But I think our car is very strong, and I'm feeling comfortable.
Oscar Piastri looking ahead to tomorrow's race, then he knows he doesn't want to stay in P3 and he'll be looking to make up ground. But of course he's got to pass the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Now, guys, I don't know if you were surprised, but I definitely wasn't expecting a front row from Ferrari. Were you?
I wasn't. I certainly wasn't. And when Charles Leclerc pulled out that lap, I was a bit kind of shocked, because they looked like they'd been struggling a little bit in the free practice sessions. They have bought quite a few upgrades here this weekend, particularly the floor. That's clearly making a nice difference to them. But Charles did a good job, and Lewis Hamilton was only just about a tenth behind him.
Yeah, he's won from second on the grid here before, actually. He was second on the grid in 2022 and took the victory. He was second on the grid the year later and actually finished in second. But it's still impressive what Leclerc's done. And also for Hamilton too, because actually that's his best grid position. OK, he's had a sprint pole, hasn't he, this year? But in terms of grid position for a Grand Prix, he starts fourth. And that is actually his best this year for Ferrari. So this Ferrari upgrade, Andrew, we've been talking a bit about the upgrade that they've got on the car. It does seem to be working here in Austria.
Yeah, it's kind of like an equal best Hamilton, because of course he qualified fourth in Monaco, don't forget, but he got the grid penalty, so it's like as good as he's got so far. Actually, I've been doing a bit of research for an article I'm going to write before Silverstone, and he's definitely made a step forward in qualifying in the sort of second half of the first half of the season, if you like. He's on average less than a tenth behind Leclerc, and this is just confirmation of that progress from Hamilton. From his point of view, of course, it's not for him, it won't be enough. He will expect to be ahead of Leclerc, but I think being ahead of Leclerc in qualifying will be tough for anybody because he's so fast. And Rosanna, I wouldn't have expected him to be on the front row, but he is very quick around Austria as well as being very quick fundamentally. This upgrade, the drivers have been desperate for. They've been talking about it for a few races. For a while, they wouldn't tell us when it was coming. Finally, in Canada 2 weeks ago, Fred Vasseur, the team principal, did admit it was going to be in Austria. They played it down at the beginning of the weekend, but it's an entirely new floor. Front fences have changed, the little scoopy wiggly bits at the side have changed, the diffusers changed, everything basically is new. And on the face of it, it does look like it's made a difference, even if they were struggling through practice initially. So they'll be encouraged. And as Leclerc was saying, they have been consistently much better in races than they have relative to qualifying form. So they could be, I don't think they're going to threaten Norris for the victory, but they could definitely be in the run for in the fight for the podium positions with Verstappen, even if you might expect the Red Bull to come through.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc said after FP2 yesterday that the race pace was good and that he felt at ease on the track straight away, but wasn't quite there with the feeling with the car, and that they wanted to improve quali trim. Well, he's gone and got himself on the front row, so you'd think he could back himself to hold on to a podium position tomorrow. And just following up on that, the upgrade topic, Lewis Hamilton, you're right, they played it down so much, saying, I don't really expect much to change, don't know what the step will be, but it seems like they've made a step on. And given that most people have them down as, I don't know if you'd agree, category, but the fourth fastest car to finish P2 and P4 today. They're definitely either outperforming it or the upgrades have given them the performance they've been looking for.
Well, Rosanna, on average, they have been the fourth fastest car. Mathematically, that is a fact. They are behind McLaren, Red Bull and Mercedes on average in qualifying over the first 10 races of the season. This is only one race, of course, and we'll have to see how it pans out over the next 3 races in Silverstone, Hungary and Belgium. I keep getting Hungary and Belgium the wrong way around. I don't know why.
It's okay, because it used to be.
You're
used to be like that.
To Belgium.
Yeah, exactly. I think last year it was the other way around for some reason, wasn't it? Anyway, park that. But it's an encouraging step. It's an encouraging first step, at least.
Well, let's hear from Charles Leclerc, surprising some of us getting the front row, but maybe it didn't surprise him. Let's hear what he's been saying to Lawrence Barretto.
Hey Charles, congratulations, outstanding lap, especially after the difficulties of yesterday. How pleased are you to be starting on the front row tomorrow?
I'm really happy. I did not expect it after yesterday. Yesterday was quite a tough day on EFP2, but all in all the pace didn't seem to be quite there. And then this morning we did quite a lot of changes to the car, and straight away it felt like we were in a better place. So I was very happy with it. Then unfortunately, if I look at the gap, I'm a lot less happy about it because it's half a second, and on a track like this, it's a big gap. But second place is a good starting position for once this year. Apart from Monaco, that was very specific. We can be starting with guys around that have a very fast race car, and I hope that we can be with them in terms of pace to at least challenge them a bit more for the win.
There's something about this pace that seems to bring out the best of you. You have always been quite quick around here. I know you've kind of couched it there by saying you're not sure if you're going to have the pace, but given the way you've unlocked the car today, that must give you a ton of confidence for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm satisfied. It's not with the second place that I find my confidence again. To be honest, I've never really lost it, but I think as a team it's important to have strong results like this. But this is only one part of the job. We need to finish the job tomorrow, but we should be happy about today. It's been a long time since we have been starting so up in for the race, so this is a good starting point. Now I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
Charles Leclerc talking to Lawrence Barretto, P2 for the Monegasque driver, and his teammate Lewis Hamilton in P4. So a positive day for Ferrari, as we were saying. And behind Hamilton, it's George Russell, P5 for the Mercedes driver. I almost feel like he'll be pleased with that because his teammate Kimi Antonelli's down in P9, and as we've said, that lap from Lando Norris was out of this world. But should he really have been mixing it with the Ferraris as well today?
We know that the Mercedes struggles in these warmer conditions, and it's meant to be even warmer tomorrow or Sunday for the Grand Prix. So I think he'll be fairly happy, but again, like you said, he would have liked to have been mixing it with the Ferraris, and he's a couple of tenths shy of Lewis Hamilton and then 3 tenths off Charles Leclerc, and yeah, it's not an ideal gap to have when he should be mixing it with them. So I think he'll be happy, but also quite disappointed at the same time, if that's even possible.
Mixed emotions for George Russell. A great result for Liam Lawson, P6. So he was actually the fastest Red Bull type car because he out-qualified Max Verstappen, who's 1 place behind him, and Isaac Hajar unable to make it into Q3, and Yuki Tsunoda down in P18. So Liam Lawson will have a bit of a bounce in his step, won't he?
He will, absolutely. A 23-year-old from New Zealand. It's a really good performance from him. Second best ever. It's only the second time he's qualified in the top 8 in Formula One. So I was very impressed with what he managed to do, and to start from 6th position for Racing Bulls. As you say, being ahead of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, that is absolutely amazing. Whether of course there might be some team instructions coming in early, I don't know, but we shall see. And fair play to Liam Lawson, because he's been through a bit of an up and down season so far, hasn't he? It's starting with that team and then going to Racing Bulls, but that is the sort of delivery that we know he's got capable of.
And the cynics will say, well, Max Verstappen had to back out of his lap because of Pierre Gasly's spin at turn 10. But, you got to be there. You got to be in it to win it. So P6, William Lawson, ahead of P7, Max Verstappen. Disappointing for Verstappen. Perhaps there was more on the table. I think there definitely was because he backed out. But he's been struggling with the car, saying it was undrivable on the radio. And they've just been suffering with a lack of grip. Alice, how does that transfer into race pace? Do you still have those same problems when you're going longer on a stint?
Just depends where this lack of grip is coming from, and it looks, to be honest, when we've seen onboards from both Max and from Yuki, similar comments between both of them. It just looks like it has understeer at one moment, a kick of oversteer at the next. It doesn't look particularly happy on that soft tyre. Max did a lot of running in free practice 3 on the hard tyre. Actually, most of his running was on the hard tyre. So maybe they've just been opting to possibly have a look at that tyre potentially suiting them a little bit better, maybe compared to possibly the medium tyre. It's going to be warmer for the race, which again it could help them in terms of with that hard tyre. But he did seem to do a lot of running, so maybe there's something that they know that we don't in terms of how that's going to be handling tomorrow. But certainly the Red Bull doesn't look nice, to be honest, comparing to the likes of McLaren, Ferrari, and you could even say the Mercedes as well.
Could be a difficult afternoon for Max Verstappen. I asked him how much more was on the table if he hadn't had to have slowed for those yellows. Could he even have been on the front row? This is what he had to say.
It just depends also a bit how those last two corners would have gone, but at least it would have been closer. But that's still 5-6 tenths off, which is of course a lot on a lap like this.
And in terms of the car, you were pretty vocal on the radio. How difficult is the car making your life at the moment?
It just didn't work in qualifying for whatever reason. And there was not one single corner where I thought we had a nice balance. Where I think in FP3, okay, we were not McLaren level, but at least it was still okay. Let's say like that. But in qualifying, it completely disappeared.
And that'll be the same for the race then, or not?
I hope not. Okay. But we'll find out tomorrow.
Pragmatic to the end. Max Verstappen talking to me in the media pen earlier on. P7 for the Dutch driver, and such a huge fan base here at Austria. So many of the Dutch army come and support him. Although we were chatting earlier on about quite a few empty seats around the Red Bull Ring, and Andrew, you made a fair point. Perhaps it's because people aren't expecting a Max Verstappen victory and aren't expecting him to win a championship, and so perhaps have saved the money and not come.
Well, I don't know. There are normally loads of them, and there aren't really normally any empty seats there. So something's changed for sure. That's the thing that immediately came to my mind as a possibility. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next few races, because of course Belgium, Hungary, and of course Zandvoort itself in Holland, they're all very, very big Verstappen-centric races in terms of orange grandstands. Maybe they all just decided a cheaper holiday in Hungary was a better option.
Before or after Belgium. And also, we are sort of talking like it's all over for Max Verstappen, but as Alice, you've been saying all weekend long, you just cannot write him off. So even from P7, he's still a contender, surely, for a podium.
Well, I think a podium's going to be tough this weekend, just looking at their pace, but you can't write them out. Who knows what can happen. The risk of a safety car here is not very high. We didn't even have a safety car here last year. But DRS is really effective, so he can claw his way up to the back with the aid of DRS. Let's say, for example, maybe Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, if they drop back a little bit and lose that DRS, he could climb his way slightly further up the order.
Just behind Max Verstappen is Gabriel Bortoleto, P8 for the Brazilian driver, the rookie driver, his first appearance in Q3. And he hasn't just scraped in. P8, that's a brilliant result. And he's actually just scooted past. Big smile on his face. What a great result for the young driver. And in Sauber, because the Sauber car hasn't been great, although there's been a bit of an upturn in performance, but he's way ahead of his teammate Nico Hülkenberg, who's starting from last position.
Yeah, that is a bit of a surprise, and I was very impressed with what Gabriel Bortoleto's done all weekend. This is a track he knows, having won in Formula 2 last year from third on the grid. So that always helps. He's raced here in Formula 3 as well. To come in a Formula 1 car car is always different, but he's been rapid all weekend, and so he's got his best ever qualifying position. First time he's managed to get into the top 10, and it's the best Sauber qualifying for this season, actually. Hulkenberg's been able to score some useful points. We're going to have to see whether he's going to be able to score some points, because he has no championship points yet, but starting in 8th place, that's got to give him a good opportunity.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting afternoon for him. He'll be looking in his mirrors, I'm sure, but just hoping he might be able to move forward as well. But of course, he'll have to get past Max Verstappen if he's to do so. Behind Bortoleto, Kimi Antonelli, P9. It's been a bit tricky. We thought their long run pace was looking good though on Friday, didn't we, Andrew? So are you expecting better things from the young Italian driver tomorrow?
No, definitely not. I think that Mercedes are going to struggle tomorrow. If it's as hot as everyone says it's going to be, then that's where they really have run into difficulties with their car, or at least have traditionally. They have made some changes to the car in the last couple of races. There's a new suspension at the rear, which has what they call anti-lift, increased anti-lift. And anti-dive at the front and anti-lift at the rear are some of the key things that are defining performance in these ground effect Formula One cars. There's some very extreme anti-dive, for example, on the McLaren this year, which is helping them keep the aerodynamic platform nice and stable. So, of course, and what that means is that if you have the aerodynamic platform stable, anti-lift at the rear, for example, it means you're going to be increasing the downforce at the rear going into the corners and coming out of them. And it's going to mean that you've got, therefore, more grip and therefore less wheel spin, so that should keep the tyre temperatures more under control. So we don't actually know at this stage whether that new rear suspension is going to have a substantive effect on the performance of the Mercedes in the hot weather. It hasn't looked like it so far this weekend, but of course it was hot in Canada too. But the difference in Canada is that there's lots of slow speed corners, short duration, and a different asphalt, whereas in Austria the asphalt's quite abrasive, and you've got these long high speed corners. So it'll be a real test for Mercedes, but at least on usual form you'd expect them to be the sort of fourth team out of the top four.
Behind Antonelli, Pierre Gasly after a beautifully choreographed spin, but of course that's not what he wanted at the end of Q3. So the Alpine driver starting P10. Looking a bit further down the order, I think the Williams team will be disappointed. They sort of knew or had an inkling that the soft tyre was going to cause them some trouble in qualifying, because they've been so much stronger on the medium and the hard tyre. But actually, both drivers picking up damage. Alex Albon damage with his floor, and Carlos Sainz almost alluding to the car being broken. So what does that mean for their race tomorrow? Starting from P12 and P19, it's going to be a long afternoon, surely.
I think there's a wider question about Williams at the moment, actually, Rosanna. They've had a really strong start to the season, and as a result, they're in a very strong position in the Constructors' Championship in 5th place with a big margin back to the teams behind them. But their form has really significantly dropped off in the last few races. There have been some circumstances that have affected that. But there's also the fact that other teams have been bringing upgrades, whereas they turned off their upgrade path much earlier than the others to focus on 2026. It's a little bit early to judge for sure. Hopefully I'll be able to get a bit more of a more comprehensive answer to this question over the next few days. But I think there's some questions to ask about how concerning that is for Williams as a team generally, just leaving aside tomorrow's performance, I think.
I think it's going to be tricky for them tomorrow afternoon as well, on top of, as you say, the wider issues. Alex Albon was alluding to having to sort of drive around some of their limitations, but also being mindful of how they approach this track. He almost said they're going to have to be more disciplined because there is that risk of damage, and obviously their car is not enjoying the curbs here. And do you remember we had that quite a few years ago in 2020 with Mercedes, the two drivers at the time, Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton, being told to avoid the curb. So, Alice, this track it's not as bad as it used to be, but it can still bite.
It certainly can, and if you're wheel to wheel tomorrow and you happen to fly over the yellow sausage curb that we've seen several drivers do on push laps today, and they instantly come on the radio and say check the floor, well, you can't afford to waste the time and come into the pits to have the floor checked during the race, obviously. So yeah, it's a tough circuit and it can certainly bite. It used to be, certainly as you said, a lot tougher. There's a little bit more room for error now. but certainly there's things that can do damage to those vitally and important floors.
Another driver who didn't make it through into the final part of qualifying was Racing Bull's Isaac Hadjar. He was so disappointed. He actually swore when he was being interviewed by a journalist to my left in the media pen earlier on. P13 for him. I think he'll be even more annoyed that his teammate Liam Lawson's up the road in P6. So he needs to get a handle on that, though, doesn't he, Alice? Because sometimes that can then sort of screw up your weekend even more.
It can, and actually he had a big spin in free practice. Say a big spin. He did a nice little 360 at the final corner, and Max Verstappen did one as well in the final free practice session. So actually didn't get to set a time on a new set of soft tyres in that final practice session, so maybe that might have hindered him a little bit, because he didn't seem to be struggling massively in the previous 2 practice sessions prior to that. So yeah, he will be disappointed. And from watching Isaac through his junior career in Formula 3 and Formula 2, yeah, he can definitely get very frustrated and certainly very vocal.
Behind Hadjar is Franco Colapinto in the Alpine. His teammate Pierre Gasly obviously had that moment in Q3, so not really sure where he would have come out if he'd managed to put a lap together. But is there pressure on Colapinto at the moment? This is the 5th round he'll be competing in now, having replaced Jack Doohan. Any worries there, Andrew, that he may or may not forego this seat at some point in the future? If he doesn't score?
It's all up in the air, isn't it? But it's certainly true that he hasn't provided the uplift in form that they might have been hoping for from him when they brought him in instead of Jack Doohan. There seems to have been no difference whatsoever in the relative performance of those 2 drivers, Doohan over the first few races and Colapinto since. It looks like he's going to carry on at least for a little while longer, but trying to guess what Flavio Briatore's mind is going to do is not the easiest thing in the world. So I don't want to make any predictions, I'm afraid.
I don't know if I want to look into Flavio Briatore's mind either, to be honest. Well, plenty to look out for across the race tomorrow afternoon. But can you tell me who you think is going to win? Just a simple answer. Maybe can Norris hold on to it?
Ben, you go first.
Well, yeah, I think I am actually going to go for Norris, because I've seen a lot of confidence in him. The way he's been driving so far this weekend, I have been impressed. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go that Lando Norris may well take the victory.
I think it's hard to see how he loses it from here. He's on pole position. He'd have to completely mess up his start and end up back down the field somewhere. Of course, that's not impossible, but, Charles Leclerc's a very sensible person. I don't expect a first corner incident, and without a first corner incident or some kind of massive drama for Norris, I think he's going to take a convincing win tomorrow.
Hulkenberg.
From 20th. That would be impressive.
No, I just wanted to say something different to
I
all
want
of
to
you.
see that race.
Absolutely.
Sign me up.
Because I also think it will be a Norris victory. But who knows? Maybe Hulkenberg can come from 20th on the grid.
There'd have to be flash flooding or something, I think. But yes, I think Lando Norris needs the win. It's whether he can hold on to P1 and convert it to victory. That's the big question. Well, Andrew Benson, Alice Powell and Ben Edwards, thank you so much for looking back over that qualifying session with me. Lights go out at 2:00 and you can follow all of the racing action across the BBC. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.